Welcome back to the Weekend Show. Joining me now is Professor Kingsley Moghalu, who is the presidential candidate of the Young Progressives Party, YPP, and former deputy governor of CBN. Thank you so much for joining us in today's program.
Thank you.
You saw our chat earlier where we were discussing paternity fraud.
Yes.
Let me read a couple of tweets from that chat before we delve into some political matters.
Okay.
We had Mick Sam, who said, "Don't blame the women if you mistakenly get pregnant for a poor man. Then a rich dude shows up. Won't you nail it on the rich guy?" Another person said, "I still think there's a slippery slope. Paternity test is mandatory. Why? Because all women are untrustworthy cheaters." I don't know. That opens up all sorts of cans of worms. Interesting. Fumilaya said, "This is an interesting topic. According to research, one child in every classroom's dad isn't who they think their dad is. Paternity fraud." Interesting. What's your reaction to that?
Well, yes, I think, these are very difficult zones of personal morality. But it can only be heartbreaking for a man to find out that a child he thought was his is not his. And I do agree that it happens in all societies. But in Nigeria, it's becoming quite prevalent because of economic hardship, like the councillor said. So it's just a very difficult thing to deal with. Yeah, very, very difficult.
Speaking of economic hardship, our topic today is the ease of doing business in Nigeria and the fight against corruption. How would you rate the fight against corruption in this administration?
Well, the fight against corruption, or what is called the fight against corruption, is simply nothing more than a hypocritical political football game where people play politics by claiming to be fighting corruption and use this as an opium for the poor masses who are disappointed, and rightfully so, with the level of corruption that our politicians practice when they're in public office. So because many poor people know that our public officials, not all of them, but many of them, steal government funds, they're rightfully very angry. So what is happening now and has happened is a cynical manipulation of this fact for political advantage. The reason why I say this is because it is very clear that there's corruption on both sides of the aisle. If you look at the two biggest political parties, whether it's the APC or whether it's the PDP. But it looks like the fight against corruption is something that is directed primarily 95% against the opposition forces. Because of that, it loses legitimacy. Now, when I become president, if Nigerians give me the mandate to become president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, my fight against corruption will begin inside my own government. That is my own attitude to fighting corruption.
And I was going to ask you the question, given the fact that you recently saw the video of the governor of Kano State, Ganduje, collecting bribes from a contractor, kickbacks from a contractor. If you were president and he was a member of your political party, how would you deal with that situation?
I would the first thing, if I was president of Nigeria, is that the EFCC has to become truly independent. That's what I would do. I would remove the EFCC from the presidency. The EFCC will not be a tool for my politics as president of Nigeria. So
how would you go about doing that?
Well, you have to, it's first of all a structural thing and a legal thing. We will go to the National Assembly to change the requirement that the head of the EFCC has to come from the police force. Why must the head of the EFCC come from the police force? Can anybody tell me why? Is it that the police force have some repository of knowledge that is so special, maybe better than a retired judge, or maybe better than somebody from the intelligence agencies, or a lot of other kinds of Nigerians who have the kinds of skills that could actually make the EFCC a much more effective institution. The second reason is that institutional independence is necessary for economic growth. When you look at Nigeria today, you will find out that the government has privatized all the institutions of state, from security to EFCC to just name it. Even the central bank is no longer as independent as it was when I was a deputy governor in the bank. So what happens with this is that when the government, acquires the institutions to serve the partisan political purposes of the political party in power, then you don't have a level playing field, either in the economy or in the society generally. And this causes a drop in confidence, business confidence. When foreign investors want to invest in a country, one of the things they look at is the strength and independence of institutions. That's a #1 metric for them. And this is one of the reasons why foreign investment in Nigeria has just dropped quite precipitously in the last few years. So the fight against corruption, my view is that, you know, if I were to become president, I would go about it as follows. Number one, start where it matters most, the value system challenge. Corruption exists in every society, and you can actually never wipe it out completely because it is part of human nature. But in Nigeria, it's at the center. In advanced countries, it's at the periphery. And when they catch you, you know that you're going to jail. So that's number one. Train children from, I will introduce the teaching of ethics as a compulsory subject from primary school level to secondary school level, so that young children grow up knowing what is right and wrong. It is that value system, if you have it strongly, that can protect you when you are faced with temptation. You see what I'm saying? When I was growing up, my father was who used to be a civil servant, a foreign service officer, and later on a civil servant. He would beat his chest, I always remember that, and say, 35 years as a civil servant, I never took a bribe. That statement left a lot of impact on me as a child. And I was brought up with a sense that you are Isaac Mogalo's son. Be very careful what you do. Don't spoil the family name. Today, do you have these types of values anymore? You
know, and that begs the question, whose responsibility is it to imbibe these values in children? Is it the responsibility of the government, or is it the responsibility of the family, the household?
It is primarily the responsibility of the family. That is the parents. So I keep talking to my children, my boys and my girl, when we discuss all these things, and I keep talking to them about their values as they're growing up. The Bible says, bring up a child in the way he or she should grow, and when they're grown up, they will not depart from it. There's wisdom in that saying. So it must start at home. But I believe that in institutions, educational institutions, the study of ethics is a second layer, especially in a country like Nigeria that is ethically, thoroughly challenged. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the fight against corruption, you know, there must be accountability for acts of corruption. The third thing is that that accountability must be impartial. It must be seen that the chips will fall wherever they may. Whoever is caught
whether
doing
it's your
this.
family member, whether it's your party member, you know, anyone who's...
Absolutely, absolutely. I just read, you know, that the wife of the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, she's on trial for something, you know, involving, or some allegations of ethical, you know, infractions. And even the Prime Minister himself has been accused. You see, so you find people in power having to face the law. They are in power, they're not just out of power. So that's when you know that a society is serious.
So you don't believe in immunity for those who are in office?
I don't believe in those types of immunities,
so
no.
If you were president, would you change that?
Well, I'm not the legislature, because those are acts of the parliament.
But you can propose it. You
can propose. Yes, of course. Yes. No, I don't believe in it, and I'm going to move for. Even if there has to be some immunity, it has to be very limited. Maybe to acts that you did while in office or something like that. You know. So I don't believe in the kind of blanket immunity some political office holders in Nigeria enjoy. I think it's inimical to the fight against corruption. Now, you know, so the next way I would fight corruption is by instituting transparency. A very proactive approach to fighting corruption is necessary, and that's lacking today in Nigeria. What happens is that people are going back using the fight against corruption to blame political opponents. But what you should do is to be proactive. How will I be proactive? We will put out, for example, when I'm president, the budget will have to go through a forensic audit before it is submitted to the National Assembly. This way, we eliminate budget padding. You see what I'm saying? So if the National Assembly itself tries now to pad the budget, that's another battle. Because I believe that the National Assembly's job is not to add to the budget. It is to examine the budget and, if possible, reduce it if they need to.
But that has been a topic for debate. The National Assembly claims that they have the right to appropriate, move items from one ministry to the other, etc.
The National Assembly has massively expanded the meaning of the word appropriation beyond what we know in civilized countries. That's the truth. I'm a man who has been around the world. I spent 17 years in the United Nations, and I served in various countries in the world. So, and you know, as a deputy governor of the central bank, I understand what appropriation means. It is not what is going on in Nigeria. The National Assembly has set itself up as a parallel executive when it comes to the budgetary process. You find them introducing new items into the budget. That's not correct. And unfortunately, the executive branch is too politically timid to take this matter to the Supreme Court. It's a matter that should be, because it's an issue of separation of powers. So only the Supreme Court can adjudicate on it.
Well, the National Assemblies, well, the legislators have said that their duty is to look or defend the interests of their people, their constituency.
Sure.
So when they add a line item for their constituency project, which we all know sometimes is mired in fraud and all sorts of opaqueness, we see that a lot of people have defended them, at least their constituents have defended them, that yes, we need that project, and it was not put in the budget because the federal government does not care about us. Therefore, it's the duty of the legislators to look out for our best interests and insert those items into the budget. So how would you deal with a situation or an argument
The problem with Nigeria is that everything always boils down to a sentimental argument. That's why we're a very poor country, and that's why we're not a developed nation. If you go to developed countries, things are done rationally. The reign of reason is still far away from Nigeria and Nigerians. Everything is about emotion, you know, very subjective arguments. So, and we need to move to a level where we can think rationally and objectively about things. Subject issues to debate and find out what's the best way to handle certain things.
In a country with the largest poverty rate in the entire world and a high illiteracy rate, how do you intend to go about that?
But that's what leadership is all about, you know. If I'm elected president of Nigeria, I plan to reform the educational system. I plan to create a national ambition and you know, propagate it to Nigerians so that we are all, starting from school, as primary school children, proud of being Nigerians, patriotic towards our country, and knowing that there is an ambition that we have that maybe in another 20 or 25 years, Nigeria should become like Dubai or something like that, and that these are the things we must do to get to that goal. It is that lack of any specific goal that keeps confusion, you know, reigning. And so people are not busy with the right things. They are busy discussing ethnic groups, religion, you know, all these kinds of poor man's, you know, arguments. Yeah.
So you don't think having that discussion is important? You believe we should advance our conversation and our thinking to more productive?
That's what I think. Okay. Yes, I think we should move to more productive engagement.
Lastly, Professor Mogulu, speaking of the structures you intend to build to fight corruption, how would that correlate to the ease of doing business? How would you attract foreign direct investment into the country, and even the people who are doing business here that complain about the lack of proper infrastructure, no power, no road, no water? How would you correlate both to ensure that Nigerians in Nigeria and people who want to invest in Nigeria can do their business without any hassle?
The problem, a lot of politicians in Nigeria talk about ease of doing business. But you know, these are things I have some, without being immodest, mastery about. Now, the matter of investment in any economy begins at the source. What is the philosophical direction of the political leadership concerning economics? Are you a capitalist economy? Every man and his uncle today in the world are capitalists. Every woman and her aunt, fine. What kind of capitalist economy is Nigeria's economy? Is it a welfare state? Is it a crony capitalist economy in which advantages are given out just to friends and cronies? Is it an entrepreneurial capitalist economy like you have in the United States? Or is it a state capitalist economy? There are 4 kinds of capitalism. There are no Nigerian politicians discussing this type of thing. But these are the kinds of things that actually can make a country wealthy. So if you understand what type of capitalist economy you are, then you say to yourself, there are three things that make a capitalist economy function very well. Number one is property rights. Number two is innovation. And number three is capital. You can't be a capitalist economy without capital. You will always be poor. That's why you find that everywhere in the world is capitalist, but only the Western world and some parts of Asia are wealthy because they're capitalists. Do you see the difference? So that's the foundation. When you have property rights, it creates confidence for investment, whether foreign investment or local investment. After all, there are a lot of wealthy people who can also invest. But when people are afraid that property rights does not exist or is very weak, for example, all the land in a country is owned by the state. So there is an industry itself concerning C of O, certificate of occupancy. Months and months are spent lobbying governments to approve C of O. That's a very, very big disincentive to
But when you look
investment.
at China, individuals can't own land in China, right?
China is a communist state politically and a capitalist state that is a state capitalist state. That is, they are practicing a kind of capitalism that is not done anywhere in the world. And that's called state capitalism. That's why I talked about the 4 different kinds of capitalism. We should know what we're doing.
We need to
I
identify.
believe that Nigeria should be an entrepreneurial capitalist state because that's what suits our culture. We are hustlers. Our people hustle, both men and women. And, you know, so in my government, for example, we will now provide an enabling environment for, you know, real business to go. We will reduce taxes on businesses. That also is something that can improve the business environment. We will streamline taxation. This question of multiple taxes on a business, it's very bad. You find a lot of businesses complaining. Different agencies of the same government will be slapping taxes on a business. How do you want the economy to grow in that sort of situation? Whereas what the government should be doing is to expand the tax base. Instead of that, they identify a few people, businesses and civil servants, and keep hammering them with taxes. That's wrong.
I agree.
Yeah.
I wish we had enough time to expatiate on this topic, but Professor Mogulu, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll take a break right now, and when we return, we'll speak with a human rights activist and political warlord, Prince Deji Adeyanju. Don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back on The Weekend Show. Welcome back to the program. Joining me now is Prince Deji Adeyanju. Thank you so much for joining us on today's program.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. There were actually a few tweets in reaction to my conversation with Professor Mogulu. I'm sure you watched that earlier. Someone said, I like this man. He's speaking so well, but then how do you reform a system that's deeply rotten? A system that has never worked? How do you intend making things work in this country? Another person said, beautiful layout planned by the presidential candidate, but how will you deal with political godfathers? Because I see them as major problems in our national development. How would you react to that?
You see, for me, you know, there's something that's called political reality, which is one of the things that Prof and several other presidential aspirants in the mushroom parties must face. You understand? It's very simple. I do not see any of them, you know, any of the other political candidates in the other mushroom parties. I do not see them. I do not see any of the candidates that will be able to deliver his local government, with the exception of Mimiko and maybe Donald Duke. So in a situation where a presidential candidate cannot deliver his local government, and we have over close to 120,000 polling units in the country, how then are you able to win a presidential election? You understand? But I would be glad for any of the presidential candidates to prove me wrong, any of the presidential candidates in the mushroom parties to prove me wrong, that in 2019 they can deliver their local government. Some of the so-called presidential candidates, like I've said on Twitter, they are just working for Buhari. They are working for the re-election of President Buhari. You understand? And they are causing distractions. Because by now, the main opposition political party in the country is PDP. By now, the conversation should be between PDP and APC, because we already know that the current president is running for re-election, and therefore we should not be having all these, you know, distractions. Because if the goal is to ensure that Buhari does not get a second term in office, then we should focus on the real issues. Yes, beautiful speeches, beautiful arguments, beautiful positions. But you see, election is not a talk show. Election is not a motivational session. You understand? Elections all over the world, including America, is about structure. Why is it that no independent has won election in America? You understand? Why is it that independents don't win election in the UK?
But isn't that a problem in Nigeria? Structure, politics overshadows ideology. You have a young presidential candidate like this who is looking to reform the system. As according to the tweet that I read to you, they're asking how he'll go about doing this. And I'm sure he's laid out his blueprint about how he'll do this. Then you have you coming here to say that it's impossible.
I'm a young person too, but I know the elections all over the world cost money. In America, Hillary Clinton versus Trump, it cost money to mobilize party agents to even go and police votes. There are about 120,000 polling units in the country. Let's even say, Osasu, that you give 10,000 naira each to each of your agents as either transportation, logistics. And what if APC gives them 50,000 naira to compromise them? So if you don't give these people money, if you don't give your agents money for transportation, for logistics, to go to the polling unit, what it means is that your agents will be compromised. Does any of the candidates in the mushroom parties, do they have 120,000 people that will serve as agents for them?
But how do we grow beyond money politics?
No, see, money is an integral. If you want to do business, wouldn't you need money? Don't you need money to run this program? You understand? Politics costs money all over the world. Whether it be in America, Asia, you know, Europe, Macron had to spend money for the election. So money is a factor in politics because some of us, we've been around for so long. Therefore, yes, we love the beautiful plans, we love the rhetoric, but beyond the rhetorics, you understand, elections all over the world cost money. And in as much as election costs money, the only political election not just costs money, it also requires structure. The only political party in the country that can challenge the current president, President Buhari, is the PDP. Because there is no polling unit in Nigeria that they don't have structure, that they don't have agents, that they don't have people that can resist rigging.
So your prediction for the general elections that is going to be strictly between...
The election is between Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and General Muhammadu Buhari. Simple.
And who do you think is going to become victorious?
I think Atiku will win the election, and I will give you reasons why I think he will win the election, the general election. You see,
other than the fact that you're a former member of the People's Democratic Party, so your ideas are probably biased.
No. I believe you follow me on social media, and you see how extremely critical I am of both political parties. But you see, thank God you say we are talking today about corruption. If we are talking about corruption, Sasu, it's very simple. I was having an interesting chat yesterday with some police officers. We were talking about the election and corruption. And they told me in all sincerity that Buhari has tried with the fight of corruption, that they want Atiku to come and fight poverty. You understand? So when you look at these are the issues that will determine the election. And sometimes, you see, because some of us, we've been, yes, we may look very young, but we've been here for such a long time. See, I can tell you how 2019 will play out. You see, when I was talking to a friend of mine who is in the APC, and he was talking about that they are banking that they will rig the election, I was laughing. I was telling him, I said, who are the people that will rig the election? The police officers, the army officers who are hungry. I said, I was talking to these police guys yesterday, and the feedback I got from them, the election is over. This election is about someone that will come and end the poverty, because the poverty in the country is too much.
But doesn't this contradict some of your previous tweets where you said that over, I think it was 6,000 that you claimed went to Ekiti State to rig the election in favor of the APC.
Yes.
And you also said a battalion of police officers went to Osun State to rig the election. So that contradicts the argument you're making right now. So which is it?
You see, one thing that we must give to INEC, you know, the present INEC, is that the era of writing results, you know, has passed. That's why politicians now go to polling unit to negotiate. It's a business kind of engagement, because they know that before, you know, people will just sit down and change results. Maybe if PDP had 13,000, they will just put one more in front, so it will be 113,000. But now you can no longer do that, because results are entered at polling units and it is done electronically. You understand? So we now have e-collation. So e-collation reduces the chances of rigging. You understand? So that has been taken care of. So anyone thinking that you'll be able to change figures, you know, in 2019, it cannot happen. You see, while it was possible sometimes to rig in some of these staggered elections, is because they have more manpower. They can post more police to you know, Ekiti or Osun, because they are staggered elections. And even at that, what they were doing is that the areas where PDP were winning, they just go and destroy the results. It's not as if they were able to change or falsify results per se. But once, just like what they saw in Osun, once they're able to damage enough results or scatter enough results in the stronghold of PDP, then they reduce the numbers. And that's why you saw that the election in Osun was close. But you see, in a general election, the stakes are higher. Like I told you, I said I was talking to some of my police friends yesterday, and the engagement was so interesting to the point that myself, instead of, you know, commenting, I spent most of my time laughing, you know, throughout the conversation. You see, and if you meet 10 Nigerians and you ask them what will be the determining factor of the 2019 election, corruption is not one of them. You see,
That's how do you know that?
Because I have been engaging. You see, yes, of course. I go to the market, I go to the barbering salon, I engage people. Sometimes I do not drive, I go into a taxi. You know, see, Nigerians have seen how Buhari is fighting corruption. If this is how to fight corruption, if this is the kind of way to fight corruption, you understand, and develop a country, I can tell you for a fact that Nigerians will not vote this government. You know, and because I have been engaging people, and social media gives, there's this feedback mechanism that you get from people talking. My very good friend and brother, Festus Kiama, told us that PDP only exists in WhatsApp and Twitter and Facebook. The reason why he said that is because it's practically impossible for Buhari to enjoy support online. If the president's handle makes a post, go and read all the comments under it. It's insults. From morning to night, they insult the president. Go to Facebook, same thing. Maybe
it is true that PDP only exists online because
you see, the worst of it all is the hunger that is existing on the street. You see, hunger has no religion. It has no tribe. You understand? Hunger does not discriminate. You understand? And I engage people when I want to buy either banana from someone. The first question I ask, oh, Madam, how the country now? Oh, we don't tire. We don't tire. May this man just come, they go.
But that doesn't necessarily lead to not voting for him in 2019. And also, most of your accusations are not predicated on facts. You know, for example, the police one that you were just talking about, because as I said, you had contradicted yourself online and now in person. But we don't have much...
There's no contradiction. It's simple, Osasu, that you see the dynamics for the general elections in 2019 is different from the dynamics of staggered elections, and that you will not have enough police to police and rig the country, because, and again, in the general election in 2019, there are more interest that is at stake. People want the country to get back working. People want someone that will come and work and improve the economy, because the present government does not have ideas about the economy. People want someone that can come and create jobs. So the issues that will determine the general election are completely different from what will determine the staggered elections. For instance, in my state, Kogi, the issues that affect us will be different from the issues that affect your state, people maybe in your state, in Edo. So there will be different reasons why people will be voting in the elections. You understand? And you see, because so many interests of the people, for instance, the police, I told you I'm talking to the army, people will have reasons why they want to vote. You understand? The market women have reasons why they want to vote. Students have reasons why they want to vote. Women have reasons why they want to vote. People in the Southeast may have a reason why they want to vote a particular candidate. People from the Southwest as well, Northwest. So the issues are so many. And because Nigeria is now the poverty capital of the world, so you can see that the poverty that people are witnessing in the street, that this government told us last year, was just PDP people who have been, who we've taken the cookie jar from them. They're the one complaining that the country is not working. But now the report card is out. We can see clearly that the cries that we've been crying since 2015, the reality is before us. And that's why we are now the poverty capital of the world and several other things.
Interesting times ahead. Prince Deji Adeyanju, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Osasu, for having me.
You're most welcome. We'll take a break right now, and when we return, we have trending issues on social media with Ina Peters. Don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back on The Weekend Show.